I wanted to make a short video where an object is cut and the sliced part turns into liquid. It should look satisfying and create a perfect loop. I stretched out the cube. This object will be cut. Next, I modeled the cutter, created a plane, scaled it, did some loop cuts and extruding. Here I tried to create thickness with Solidify modifier, but with the handle being the same object, it didn't really work. So I manually made the blade thicker. Used the magnet to create the other side of the blade the same length and used shortcut F to connect both sides. Next, I used Boolean modifier to cut the rectangle and animated it so it would move up and down. Then, I duplicated the rectangle, applied the Boolean to one of them, animated it so that the first one would be the rectangle with the Boolean not applied. Then right after the frame, where the rectangle is cut, it should switch out with the second rectangle that has applied Boolean on it. Next, the part that has been cut off needs to be separated and turned into liquid. I placed the fluid modifier on it and put it on flow. Then I created the domain, switched to liquid, and it's not working. Checked the settings, everything looked okay. Tried to switch something, tried to bake it, nothing happened. Decided to check if there was a problem with the domain settings. So I made a new shape, put it into the domain, made it a liquid, baked it, and it worked. So the problem is with the flow shape, not the domain. Check the settings again, they were all the same. Realized that the shape didn't come into the domain until the frame 30, but the liquid simulation started at the frame 1. So I changed that to be 30, baked it, and it worked. I didn't want the liquid to drop so fast. I wanted it to be more like a gel, so I tweaked the settings a little bit. Baked it, and now it's more like a blob. That is what I wanted. Now it's time to create the scene. Created a plane that would be the ground, made it into a fluid effector, baked it, and it doesn't affect anything. Thought that the bottom of the domain could be the ground. Baked it, and it works. I really like the viscosity of the liquid, but if it's going to be a loop, it needs to disappear somehow. For this, I needed the ground to actually work, so I placed the Solidify modifier on it. It didn't work. I animated it so that the ground would move away and drop the liquid. That could create a perfect loop, but I forgot to insert keyframes, and the ground didn't even work anyway. And somehow the liquid blob moves forward at the end. Then I applied the Solidify modifier in the hopes that it would fix everything. This time I moved the ground and put the keyframes in. I read somewhere that the surface thickness needs to be at least 0.5 for it to work, so I tried that and it worked. But now the liquid explodes and is hovering above the ground. I made the ground a big box and it kind of works, but if I reduce the surface thickness, the liquid explodes again and moves forward. So I decided to take a pause. Different day, I baked it again and it doesn't work. So I decided to start from the beginning. The ground, the shape. This time I set the camera first to see how it would look. Animated the shape, created the cutter, beveled the handle, animate the cutter, Boolean, doubling the shape, applied the Boolean to the second shape, separating the sliced part and turning it into a liquid, creating the domain, and it doesn't work again. The same problem as the first time, but I don't remember that. So I'm messing around with the settings and trying to bake it. If I change it to flow, it works and also looks kind of cool, but it's not what I wanted. Then I think that subdividing the shape would work, but of course it doesn't. Deleting the subdivides and thinking, now I remember. Change the frame to 30, it works. Hide the cut off cube so only the liquid remains. Remember to hide it on the render view as well. I didn't do that at this point. Ditch the idea of moving the ground and let the liquid just drop. Change the settings to make it look more like a gel. Now I need to hide the domain. The only way I know how to do that is to move it out of the way when it shows up, and that works pretty well. The animation looks okay now. Tweaking the settings to make it higher quality, and now moving on to the materials. Found a pastel color palette, made the ground longer so it doesn't cut off, and placed an HDRI as my background, but I did it wrong. I should have used environment, not image texture. That's why it doesn't show up, instead just creates purple color. But that wasn't important in this render, so I didn't bother to change it. Beveling the rectangles so that it looks more like the liquid part, shade smooth and auto smooth normals. Do the same to the other rectangle. Tweaking the animation so everything works. Beveling the cutter's edges and making the blade metal. Looks like the animation worked. Just need to do something with the materials. Made basic wood texture that didn't look good. I wanted the liquid part to turn into glass-like substance, like it has melted. Somehow unlinking the materials made them black. I think it's just a bug. Tried out some real materials. These are available at Ambient CG webpage. I will link it in the description. Took some gold materials, maybe it could be a gold bar melting. Forgot how to add materials with Node Wrangler and tried to link the whole zip file multiple times. Of course it didn't work. The right way is to press Ctrl plus Shift plus T while the principal BSDF node is selected. Then the file window opens, which you cannot see here. Select just the 5 image textures and then it creates a material automatically. This will only work if the Node Wrangler add-on is enabled. Took a wood texture from Ambient CG, changed the UV settings, made it not as rough and it looked very nice. Tried to fix the gold material as well, but I didn't like how that looked either. Then tried out some scratched plastics, but now there's a problem with material placement. The scratches looks different between the rectangles, and on the liquid it doesn't show at all. Messed around with settings and placement, but the only way I know how to fix it is mapping the material to an empty, but the materials with scratches wouldn't create a perfect loop anymore. I made the ground into a concrete, but didn't like the overall look. Tried switching some things, rendered a test, and craft. Opened it again, correct some things, render, craft. Simplifying the liquid material because it doesn't work anyway. Somehow the animation changed and the domain showed up. And crashed. Decided to ditch the scratched plastic and made a simple plastic with layer weight, but I forgot how the layer weight works as well. It just needs a color ramp. Then animated it to turn into glass when liquefied. It looks okay, but now the concrete looks a bit odd. Rendered the test, placed image sequence into video editing program. I used DaVinci Resolve. Made the liquid with more detail and the domain showed up again. Experimented with some colors and metallic texture. Looked looked at some satisfying video references. Most of them have bright colors, so I decided to go for a bright gradient. Rendered, placed into DaVinci Resolve, did some color correcting, and the video is done. In conclusion, I think that the composition could be better, the colors as well, but I learned a lot making this and it's time to make a new render. Hopefully it will be better. Thanks for watching.